And for commodities market update, we have Juliet Adenuga, Head Treasury Financial Derivatives Company, joining us right here in the studio. Great to have you again.
Thank you for having me, Laddie.
Yeah, so we saw that inflation figure from the U.S., and it's a moderation this time. It's not as we expected, another high. This time it came down. How are you seeing that?
Well, it wasn't as if it wasn't expected, because already they have started setting the monetary policy in motion to attack inflation and ensure that it doesn't continue trending upwards. With the headline inflation at now 8.5%, while the core inflation is at 5.9%, I don't think it's even gotten to what the Fed is gunning for, because they have a target of 2% or a benchmark of 2%. So it's expected that they will put everything in motion to ensure that they keep having a downward trend in terms of inflation, because inflation is very, very detrimental to their economy. So I expect that the Fed will still, find a way to ensure that the monetary policy put in place to hammer on inflation and to deal with inflation continues, even though it might not be as steep as it's been initially with their 75 basis points increase. But with the tapering down of inflation and the impact it's having on the economy, the opening up, and the hope and the expectation of the people, and how it's affecting demand also, especially with respect to what happened to the gasoline price, the dropping to as low as below $4 for a gallon of gasoline. It's now on around $3.99. So with that and the increase in demand and a little bit of improvement in economic activities a little bit, I think that the Fed might not hammer as before, but they are not going to stop, because the price of other things like food hasn't been curtailed. Things like housing is still an issue, and that housing is very tightly connected to interest rates. So I think the Fed might want to kind of like also tidy up with what is left of what they plan to do in terms of monetary policy measure to hit down on inflation, so that it can reflect fully on things like mortgage, so that people will really know, like their basket, they really know where they are and what they are facing. Quite interesting.
And I also see there that the gasoline price there in the U.S. is down about $4 a gallon. That's also helping, I bet.
It's very, 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 very positive for the economy, because initially people had to cut down on consumption. People had to cut down trips. People had to find alternative ways of ensuring, because that was very, very high. In June, it was $5.02, an all-time high for them. They are not used to such, expenditure, because people don't really, spend that way in America. So they had to begin to curtail. I know when people curtail activities like traveling, transportation, going to work, it's just like squeezing the economy. The economy begins to once activities begins to reduce, it's not good for them. So with this positive change,
gasoline prices. Very interesting.
It's very, very, very positive, and it's demand. You will notice people will pick up. People will become more interested, even though they've not reached where they are going to. They've not yet gotten to what is best and ideal for every American to afford. Yes.
Because I remember when the gasoline prices started going up, I saw on social media how people were making fun of it, showing that for you to buy gas in the U.S.,
it's a big thing.
It showed that you have money.
At that time. Most people commute with buses.
Exactly.
Yes, most people commute with buses, but the effect, it landed also on the face.
So that means seeing this moderation now with the inflation rate, that means we're seeing some impact, from the rate hikes. About 3 rate hikes we've seen from the U.S. Yes. That means this is a sign that it could be working.
Yes, it could be. Of course, that is the monetary policy measure that is supposed to curb inflation. When they tighten, that is just pure economics. It's supposed to, because that tightening will cause people to spend less. They will begin to conserve. They want to invest, because interest rate is more attractive. It becomes more attractive to save. The marginal propensity to save increases, and people consume less. So that's basic economics. It's supposed to have that effect, all things being equal. And it's good that it's making that impact on the people. But one has to also be careful that recession doesn't creep in. That is why I was trying to say earlier that the steepness of the measure might not be the application might not be that steep, because there's a way the Fed can go about it that will make for a soft landing and help them to avoid the recession that was looming in the horizon earlier.
And I'm wondering, is it time for us to start celebrating, with this moderation now? Maybe we can see global inflation actually start inching down. Hopefully it has peaked.
Affect us, Nigeria.
Exactly.
Well, I don't think it's time for us to start rejoicing. I have my reasons because, our food basket is different from theirs.
Right.
Not different as in that we don't have food, but what's caused our own inflation, or the factors that drive our own inflation, have so many undertones and so many other factors that cause it to be. If you look at the inflation we are facing now, we have that challenge of so many other things that are factors that are exogenous, as more structural than theirs, and then we having to deal with some particular structural issues. It cannot be a magic. We cannot just even apply just that tightening of the monetary policy, and expect our own inflation to just drop alongside.
Right.
What is happening in the U.S. can benefit us in that we might not import. Our problem of, we are importers.
Exactly.
Our problem of imported inflation might reduce. Our import bill might reduce, which might be good for our external reserve, and also help us be able to give the central bank more to use to defend the Naira. And
get rid of some of that imported inflation.
Yes, that's in that way. But I can't say that directly it's going to impact, because we have our own internal issues that's like the supply aspect.
Right.
That we need to change in that, like supply having to come in, we having supply to affect the price. So we can't wish it away. We have to really work on our own structural problems and issues and see how we can benefit from what is happening.
So much work to be done. And I see on the flip side that China inflation increases to a 2-year high. It's 2.7%. And I'll give anything for our inflation to be 2.7%. But this is a problem.
Yeah, from where?
From China, there.
Yes, I mean, from where? You asked yourself from where? They were on like close to zero, if not
exactly.
Zero.
So
it's a big deal. But China has been through a lot lately.
Right.
With COVID persisting, China is just like where US was a year ago. They are trying to open up. And when the economy begins to open up little by little, there will begin to be receive flickers of demand. But China was able to curb inflation by being very strict. It was like a no policy. For COVID, their policies were very, very strict. They didn't like pump in, China, they didn't like pump in palliatives and reliefs for people. They were very, no, they were not into that. And then the outbreak of COVID was so consistent, sporadic, and continuous, and kept dealing with consumer demand and business and demand for business. So that was what kept that inflation low. But now that the economy is opening a little bit, I know that China has so many trade partners, and there will be a backlog of demand from those partners. So it's likely that the inflation might not even remain this 2.7, because demand is going to, there will be a surge, an increase in demand that might also drive the inflation rate a little bit higher, maybe to around 3 or 3 points, in that neighborhood of 3 points.
Right.
Yeah.
And oil prices, there we're seeing a dip, in prices again. Well, I like when the prices of oil actually goes down, but I know the traders won't like that. But we're seeing that dip continue, and it looks like we're going much lower, below the $100 per barrel.
The dip is not, it's not always that. It's fair for us because we can say that subsidy bill, reduces by the dipping, but at the same time, we are a huge dependers. We depend so much on revenue from oil as a nation, and if we can deal with our 400,000 barrel, position of stolen oil, and can get that into the economy, it will be good for our Naira. It will be good for the whole economy. So the aspect of oil price being fair or being better when it dips, it shouldn't be. If we had handled subsidy, and it's not an issue that we are dealing with in this government, and then if we had also had to deal with the other aspects of what we are losing illegally, I think we will be wishing for the oil price to go on, so that our revenue we can be able to hack, get in as much, improve our external reserve, pump into the system, and ensure that our Naira is stronger than what it's still.
And I just want to see energy prices, going down, and we obviously know that, all prices going up, that's eating into energy prices. Yeah. But now we saw that ExxonMobil Nigeria asset sale, it hit another hurdle now, and we've seen the president has rescinded from his approval. How do you see that?
It's just a regulatory issue. It's not more than regulation, because the Petroleum Industry Act passed last year had that provision that any major oil player that has a license in Nigeria doesn't have the right to just transfer it to another without a written approval from the Commission. So the petroleum minister, fine, gave the approval, go ahead, sell to Seplat at $1.2 billion. But the Commission said, no, we've not given you a written approval. So that's just the issue. It's not beyond the regulatory issue.
And do we see them, giving that approval at some point?
I hope so. NNPC feels they have the first right to ExxonMobil, actually, and they are also on that aspect talking about it. So we hope to see what comes out of it. It depends on what their interests are and where they want to go.
Right, and looking at the Naira now, we've seen it's fallen again. It's about 680. That's in the parallel market, and we saw that happen there. And obviously, I was expecting, the Naira would, keep strengthening with what we saw last time, but we're back again, weakened.
Yes, it's just on demand. The demand is still up there. Students are going back to school. I hope you know that with what is happening with the strike, so many more parents had to push their children to study outside. And for that to happen, you need to pay school fees. And a lot of times banks now do not really have. So you have to source from the parallel market to fund your expenditure in that aspect. There is the aspect of medical health or medical bills too that people have to deal with. Even airlines, restrictions on tickets, and people have to source for all these things from the parallel market. So it's hinged on the back of rising demand for this forex, which is a key issue. Without a corresponding supply, it will always be on the high.
Right.
You can't just do anything. That is simple force of demand and supply. And once you deviate in one way or the other, market will still return itself at equilibrium. It will do everything to return itself at equilibrium. So with the demand still high there and people are still demanding for more of dollars to do one thing or the other, it will still keep. And even manufacturers too, they are not out of all these things that we need to import raw materials. Right. They have to source for these things, and it's not there in the banks. So most times people have to also source through the parallel markets. Yeah,
and that is why it keeps. We need more dollars coming in as well.
We really need more.
All right, let's look at the goodies now. Well, there's some good, right there. We see high cocoa price, good for exporters. What's driving sentiment there?
The high cocoa price, what's driving sentiment is actually on the back of expected reduction in supply, because now the weather is bad for cocoa. If you noticed, in the key cocoa areas in Abidjan, in Ghana and Ivory Coast, the weather has been, we thought initially it was August break we were experiencing in July, but it continued. And even the weather forecast henceforth further down the road in August shows that it's not drought, like the dry season it's beaten hard. So it affects cocoa. It's not good for cocoa, and it's going to affect the output. So on that premise, that is what is already pushing up the cost of, or the price of cocoa.
Quite interesting. Well, we'll keep tracking those commodity prices and see how Nigeria can actually profit from these prices. Thank you so much, Juliet Adenuga, Head Treasury, Financial Directors Company. It's great always having you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now, after the break, we'll take the conversation further. We're looking at how Nigeria's medium-term expenditure framework, how that's looking. We'll be drilling down on what was released last week. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. This is Business Morning.